Hi everyone, welcome to Inspired, a Project Lead the Way podcast. I'm Dave Dimmett, Project Lead the Way President and CEO, and I'm joined today by two really amazing guests. So we're going to dig into a conversation today about AI. Try not to be too theoretical, it's hard not to because we're in this really interesting phase of AI development and machine learning and quantum computing and all the other things and how it's impacting our personal and professional lives. But I'm joined by Sara Seba from AWS, one of Project Lead the Way's longstanding and most impactful partners, and also a longtime colleague of mine, Brian Greiwe, who is our Chief Technology Officer here at Project Lead the Way. So maybe let's just jump in, and Sara, if you just start by giving us a little bit of a highlight of what's a day in the life look like? What are the things that you wake up and think about and do every day?
Sure. So, thanks for the question. I should probably start by saying what I do for a living and how I ended up here, because I think that will frame the day in the life. So, Sara Seba, I do work for Amazon Web Services, AWS. Even in case you haven't heard of Amazon, we don't only send packages, we also do the cloud and artificial intelligence. And so in that group, I sit in the nonprofits organization and I lead customer solutions and AI specialists. So I get to go out and sit with customers like Project Lead the Way and help figure out how we're going to solve some of the toughest problems in the world using AI and cloud tech.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize the impact you're already having on AI in education. I'm excited to talk about that a little bit today. And we've had a long-standing relationship going back to work we've done with cybersecurity, which is one of the most important courses I believe that we teach. So we'll get into some of that today too. So Brian, talk a little bit about your role and what you do on a day-to-day basis here. And you lead, you're not maybe the typical CTO in my opinion. You're a very engaged K-12 educator at heart in my opinion. So maybe talk about your work.
Yeah, sure. CTO here at Project Lead the Way. I've been here for 8 years. So mainly that translates into leading the IT team. We do all the stuff for both internal and external enablement. But growing up, my dad always told me, in his opinion, education and technology are the great equalizers. Mm-hmm. And so that's just been ingrained in me since then. So education I'm really passionate about, and obviously technology I'm passionate about. So I think Project Lead the Way has been the great marriage of both of those for me. Before this, I was in industry for 15 years doing development and tech leading and stuff, and now I can find a place where both my passions kind of work together.
When I think about our work, how it's evolved over the last, and I've been here for 15 years now, our work has evolved a lot during that time. And when we come into the room as a team to talk about what are the things we're going to do, the experiences we're going to build for the students we serve, for the educators we serve, you're always at the table. And I think you've been really instrumental in this transition for us. We've really become more of an ed tech experience for students, ed tech enabled, but still a hands-on project problem-based experience. You had a chance to talk about some of that recently at the AWS Imagine event. Would you give us a highlight of that before we jump into our first couple of questions?
Sure. Yeah, it was a great experience. To give a little background on what it is, the Imagine conference for nonprofits is where nonprofit leaders, technologists, change makers who are using technology to drive impact come together. So a lot of nonprofits got to get on stage and share about what they're doing with AWS and how it's driving their organization or the impact they have for their constituents. I got to talk about Project Lead the Way, our impact, the work that we do, and then some of the work we're doing with AWS now through the Imagine grant that we were awarded, and how we're going to leverage that to kind of accelerate getting AI supports and education into the hands of educators and students. And so what was really just awesome was just seeing how many nonprofits out there are experimenting and implementing AI in practical ways to really drive their mission.
Yeah. What I love about that too is because we've had a chance to be at AWS events a couple times over the years, and a lot of times we're going because we're learning, like we're a learning organization in multiple ways. You know, we're helping other people learn, we're constantly learning, and we're feeding that back into the business. But now we're in a position where there are things we're doing that are really hopefully useful to others, and having AWS giving us a chance to share that on the stage. I think that was really great.
Truly leading the way.
Yeah, I love that. So we're going to jump into a couple of questions now. Obviously, we're here to talk about AI. There are a couple of different worldviews or paradigms you can take, and can be the sky is falling, or look at this powerful tool that's coming to help save humanity. I don't hear that one too much. But I want to talk a little bit at first about, as you're out, Sara, and you're thinking about K-12 education, what do you think, what's the state of AI in schools today? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Yeah. So a couple of things on that. First, I am a former educator, K through 6 STEM education, and I left the classroom 6-7 years ago. And so what I'm seeing kind of with that former history and lens and the technologist seat that I sit in today, it varies widely based on the position of the district, on the kind of knowledge and enthusiasm of the educator. So in some places, I'm seeing a tremendous amount of innovation and adoption. There are places where at the district level, they're adopting new AI technologies in various education technology tools that they already have in their day-to-day activities through Microsoft or Google, working with organizations like yours to make sure that they are thinking really deeply about how they are going to change both their lives as educators and the administrative type of work that they do on a daily basis, but also for their students to make sure that they are thinking ahead of how they're going to empower their students to think deeply about what AI is going to mean in their future, because it's definitely going to be in their future.
Yeah.
We're not putting that genie back in the box.
No.
And so the kind of really forward-thinking organizations are thinking about how they're going to build the workforce of tomorrow, and that workforce is absolutely going to be using AI and agentic AI, and students are being prepared in some parts of the country to be really good users and enablers of AI, but of course, the democratization of AI is incomplete, and so there are places where we still have a lot of educators who are afraid to even allow computers in their classroom. So it's a continuum.
Yes, I think you said that in about the nicest way you could possibly say. It really is a continuum, and one of my biggest fears, besides the jobs apocalypse, is the idea that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is going to be exacerbated by not AI so much, but by some of the apprehension and you said the word fear. That's my biggest concern, is that fear and that slowness to respond to the moment will widen the gap a little bit too. I want to come back to that in a little bit. But Brian, what's your take on that?
I think Sara covered it really well. I think early on a lot of it was around and still now some apprehension. Cheating, what does it mean for teachers in the classroom, and some uncertainty out there. But I think there's been, at least in some areas, not globally, but a little bit of a shift to more experimentation and curiosity of, okay, what can this do for me in the classroom? How can this support my students? I think there will be that situation where you have those teachers or those schools or districts that are a little bit more forward thinking and trying to find tools to implement in the classroom, where you do have those that are also very apprehensive. But what I think also is, if you kind of pull back outside of education, the same things happen across industry. So you have those folks who are really forward thinking, trying to adopt or rapidly adopt. You have those who are kind of dabbling a little bit and experiment. And then there are those who they don't want to touch it yet. They don't know what to do with it. So education is kind of mirroring what's going on in industry, but unless education starts to catch up a little bit more and try to find more opportunities to teach students the responsible and ethical use of AI, that gap is going to grow.
I saw a statistic just in the last week that talked about something like 80+% of educators are now using an AI, at least one AI tool. And my big question, you see data like that, and then really what it leads to, for me anyway, is more questions. So is that in the school day? Is that for professional purposes? Is it private?
Did they just search something?
Right.
Because now you can't search without using AI.
That's exactly right. Is it a Google search kind of enhanced type of thing? But I see what you're seeing in schools now too, where there are some districts that are really out there on the frontier, and they are adopting. They have established a policy. I think that's a lot of the early work for a school or a school
Yes.
district is to establish what are the ground rules, what are the norms, what's the policy that we're going to embrace. And then everything else kind of comes out of that, including educator literacy, maybe it's parent and guardian, literacy around AI. What is it? Let's not be scared. Let's be realistically engaged. And then using the tools, right? And you talked about, like, how do we use these tools to solve a problem in the classroom? But I see districts that are way out there, kind of on the frontier. Even in those settings, I see very lumpy use. And so even uneven in those places, and then still, no question right now, there are schools that you cannot use AI on campus. It's blocked.
Yeah, that's kind of putting your head in the sand.
Yeah.
I come from ed tech as well. I built calculators for many, many years. So I was part of the calculator wars, where it was well, we can't allow a student to have a calculator on a test. Well, if you're just checking to see whether they can add, then calculator on the test probably isn't a good choice. But they very quickly get past the point of where you should be testing them on, can you add? We should be moving to higher order thinking. And AI is going to be the same situation, where students need to understand how to utilize it responsibly. And teachers need to be thinking about how that's going to change how you assess, how you talk to your students about the use of this tool, just like it did for calculators and the internet, because it inherently means that students are going to have access to information that was rote memorization before. And rote memorization does not prove that the student has internalized that knowledge. AI is going to be the same idea, where we need to make sure that students are using it to solve complex problems, so we're encouraging higher order thinking.
The model for school about memorizing facts, like, we have held on to that for way too long. And so if there's something good that comes out of this moment that we're in, I hope that we can finally break through that. And I'm hearing more and more talk about human skills, judgment, ethical reasoning. How do you work together as a team to solve a problem? And so much emphasis has been placed on sort of the last day in class, where you take the big test, and that big test tells us everything.
Right.
And very little emphasis has been placed on, if it's a 180-day school year, what do those 180 days look like? That's the most important part. What do the 180 days look like? Not what does this little bitty sliver of time look like at the end, where we try to get everybody to give us the right answer.
Right.
So Brian, you look like you wanted to jump in.
Well, I was just thinking, I think one of the things that's a challenge right now for teachers and schools is there's been this rapid rise of different AI tools. You have all these third-party SaaS providers. You've got an AI tool that helps you build lesson plans, an AI tool that helps you build an assessment. And so there's all these different tools out there. So there's also a lot of noise. So I think one of the important things to start doing, especially in the ed industry, is to find a way to collate these, bring them together, so a teacher doesn't have to go to 7 different systems to do their work in the classroom. How can we better support teachers by giving them maybe one source point? Maybe they all link together or something, but reduce the noise, because I also think that would help reduce the apprehension.
Yeah. Well, and we're seeing that in industry as well. There's a tremendous amount of noise, and the AI space is evolving more rapidly than any technology in known history, and so it's going to be a moving target. And I think part of what we, in the ed space need to be doing is anticipating that it's going to continue to change very rapidly. And so what we adopt as educators, that's going to need to continue to evolve, and how you're preparing the students to anticipate that change, I think is a really important part of preparing students for the workforce they're going to enter, is that this is rapid.
And it's one of the things that we've really leaned into and we think a lot about students, but in this situation, more than anything I've seen recently, we have to think about the educators too. So I think our support for teachers has to change. Even going all the way back to pre-service teacher education programs, they're going to have to think differently about how they prepare students for these professional opportunities. And I've said this pretty consistently. The burden on teachers right now is too high. If there is a way to use these tools so that the teacher role is empowered, strengthened, and like you said, Brian, like we've got to cut through some of the noise too, but that's going to come through the learning that we're trying to do. I love what we're doing with demystifying AI. We're still at this point where we're trying to help teachers build literacy and comfort around the use of these tools, appropriate use, and I think that's one of the things that we've really leaned into is the teacher professional learning. And we can't help students the way we want to help them until we've supported educators the way we want to help them too. So let's jump in and talk about a couple of the myths that are out there. And we can call them myths now because we don't know yet. You know, in 20 years they'll look back and say, Brian was right, Sara was right. But one of the myths, and this really is interesting because I'm listening to a lot of the AI podcasts. We're probably listening to some of the same ones. And it depends on who you're listening to or what program. You can hear people talk about, you know, all the jobs are going away, or this is going to be just a subtle shift, and then everything in between. So let's talk for a moment about jobs. So what's the future of jobs?
Do you want to?
Well, let's start with you.
Okay. All the jobs are not going away. That is not the case. We've been through these types of cycles as humanity before. Yep. Industrial Revolution is a great example. Bringing in electricity totally changed how we did manufacturing. Yep. All the jobs didn't go away, right? The types of jobs that people were doing did change. Yep. And the types of jobs people are doing now will change. But there are things that are uniquely human that will remain uniquely human, and we are still absolutely going to need people to do that work. Yeah. This is a pivotal time where it is opening up new types of jobs that we've never even considered before. Prompt engineering is a great example of you need people who understand how the systems work, what a reasonable ask of AI is, and there's going to be whole industries like that around AI. But automation is going to be a part of what AI brings to us. With agentic AI, there's a ton of potential to bring out the work that is really better done by technology. And we'll need to figure out how to prepare people for that shift.
Well, in some industries, it's going to be a massive increase in safety.
Absolutely.
There are some jobs
safety research. We're seeing tremendous breakthroughs in even, we were talking last night about Allen Institute and the brain discoveries that are underway and empowered by AI. AI is moving to a place where it can reason, it can prompt, it can take action. Obviously, it needs to be done within guardrails, and people need to be setting those guardrails. AI will very confidently give you the wrong answer to things. And so having people prepared to ask critical questions of AI will remain.
Well, critical thinking will be more important than it's ever been.
Absolutely.
I think as a former English teacher, I actually think that there is a role for the humanities, a really important role. Think, what does it mean to be human in the age of AI or the quantum age? And then having judgment. Like when COVID hit and we went, a lot of us who worked in face-to-face environments, we went home, we logged on, and we kept working. But we benefited, there was a term that I learned then, we benefited from what was called a reservoir of trust. So we had all these relationships that we built up over years of working together. We knew each other. We had connections established from our face-to-face work. That reservoir of trust helped us go be effective in an entirely different environment. Right now, I feel like a lot of the adults who have embraced AI can look at an output and say, that's not reasonable, or this logic is faulty. Let's bring me back, and change the approach a little bit. So there's a reservoir of judgment that we have now, I think largely because of experience, and maybe it's education, but I think a lot of it is life-lived workplace experience that a lot of us have that are now embracing these tools. That's one of the fears I hear people talk about is if the education system doesn't change, then where's the judgment?
I have that fear.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Like when you bring interns in, when you have a first-year teacher, if you have kids of your own who are learning to drive, like there's certain things that you develop by circles around the sun. Like you just
sure.
need a certain amount of time where you've done a thing. And AI isn't going to build that for people.
Yeah.
They're still going to have to know how to develop that judgment, that critical reasoning, that, hey, cite your sources, because AI is predictive.
Yeah.
It is getting to a place where there is reasoning and there can be next steps and there can be levels of judgment in it. But I am concerned about how we build that for this group of people who haven't been in the world long enough.
And digital literacy is different now. Like understanding, that's our Principles of AI course. I love that the first part of it is focused on how are the models trained, how do they reason, why does that matter, why does data quality matter? I think that's really important. Brian, you want to hear your take on the jobs?
Yeah, I don't know if I can add much more. I mean, I think you busted the myth already, but no, I think we've seen this, as Sarah already alluded to, every technology shift comes with this fear. What does it mean for my job? What does it mean for my career? And in my industry experience, I think what I've noticed is work just evolves, right? Maybe some jobs change, maybe some jobs do go away, but there are new jobs to take their place. And right now, one of the most common uses for AI is to automate repetitive tasks or monotonous tasks. And what that does is that frees up time and space for critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, the human skills that AI is not replacing right now. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And you talked about digital literacy. So for a long time, we've talked about digital natives, right? Mm-hmm. So my kids, our kids, they grew up with computers and phones. We're in an era now of AI natives, but like you alluded to, no one is teaching them what AI is and how to use it. So it's just something that's kind of ubiquitous for them, and they don't understand some of the risks, some of the value. And I think it's really important that that's a conversation we start having, because when these AI natives enter the workforce, if they come in with the wrong assumptions or without the judgment skills, that's going to be critical. And one thing I'll add is I don't know that AI is the biggest threat to someone's role. No. I think the bigger risk is someone who comes in and knows how to use AI effectively in that role is a risk for someone.
AI-enabled people are going to be the biggest risk, I think. Well, I agree.
This artificial intelligence podcast that I've been listening to, one of the things, and they talk about, for companies, if your team members are not using the tools, the appropriate tools, but then your customers are or your partners are, well, they're going to have an advantage over you too. And I will tell you, I know people who have used AI tools to negotiate car leases, to negotiate
plan
all
trips,
kinds of other things. And you can use it to support personal work. And that's actually a great way to learn, in my opinion. But one of the things you both talked about is this period, like it's a shift that we're seeing. And what I think we can't underestimate is how disruptive that shift can be for the people who are living in it right now. And if you talk about the Industrial Revolution or any other technological advance, people who are caught up in it, their lives changed. And that's where we have an opportunity, I think, right now, if we choose to take it, is to help figure out all the ways that we need to support not just young people, but adults as well, who are going to be living through this inevitable shift. It's inevitable at this point. So what are the ways that we're going to support them? I am seeing state government lean in some ways, a lot of it around education, upskilling. Michelle Weiss has a great book that kind of combines a couple things, not so much focused on AI, but talking about, longevity. And so these issues are enough right now in the world that we live in today. But if you think about people living and working longer, potentially, you're constantly going to be thinking about upskilling and reskilling, those kinds of things. So thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Inspired, a PLTW podcast. Today's episode focused on AI in education. Great conversation today. Be sure to join us for part 2 as we dig back into the rest of this conversation. Also, please like, rate, share, review the Project Lead the Way podcast. Help us get this story out to more educators across the country. Thank you.